Welcome, everyone.
Just gotta
Not yet.
get the address.
Get the address. Try it again.
Should I try it
Let's
again?
try it again.
Welcome, everyone,
To
to the May
the May
13th
13th
meeting of
meeting
the
of the
Portsmouth
Portsmouth
School
School
Board.
Board.
Okay.
I think we're
Okay,
okay.
good. Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome,
Welcome,
everyone.
everyone.
Lisa Rappaport,
Here.
Eric Moore, Nathan Delaney.
Here.
Okay, Patty, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any announcements or recognitions?
An announcement, I think it's particularly important for families at New Franklin School. So in my memo to you, it included information about the fact that MC3, which is our after-school program at New Franklin School, received additional information from the state around our federal funding that helps provide for that program. That we would no longer be able to, starting July 1, that we would no longer be in a position to utilize a 21st Century Learning Grant that is connected with that program for non-eligible students, so for students who are not eligible for free and reduced lunch. And we announced that just before vacation, because we just received it. We did not have a solution at that time, but we thought it was important that families knew right away that that was potentially going to be a problem. During the vacation, I mentioned this in my memo, so I'll cover some of the stuff that's already in there. We quickly started having conversations with Portsmouth Rec and with Seacoast Community School, which which is not us, which is a third party who runs the PEAK program at Dondero and at Little Harbor. And previously it had a program at New Franklin School. We are still in the stages of planning with Seacoast Community School, but we think we're reasonably confident at this point that we're going to be able to offer a site-based program run by PEAK, a PEAK program that will be available at New Franklin. Now, the price point connected to that, we know. Well, it's good that people will have slots available for that neighborhood-based program. As a result of the federal funds over the years, folks who have had children who have received after-school care through MC3 have paid a lesser amount than folks at the other two schools. So this programming will be, the price point will be more reflective, and I don't have those numbers in front of me at the moment, but the price point will be more reflective of what is happening at those other two sites. There should be information coming soon. Just the other day, we had the folks at New Franklin and the folks at Seacoast Community really starting to get into the logistics of what that's going to look like. So something is coming, and we've been a little bit hesitant to make any announcements until we had commitments from folks that could actually occur. The details of which we hope to have a firm hold on pretty quickly. But those slots will be available. What we've been trying to work through is about 70 students or so who currently take advantage of the after-school programming at New Franklin School. Some folks have already gone and registered for programming through Portsmouth Rec, which opened up their stuff yesterday morning, and they had 30 slots, which were very quickly gobbled up by families, a portion of which were families connected to New Franklin. But we are now moving ahead with a plan that would have Peak do a site-based program. So I just want to make sure those families knew. All the details are not spelled out yet, but we've been working hard through the vacation and into the last few days of trying to have a solution that's going to be available for parents, because we know that after-school care is very difficult for people to obtain. And so hopefully we're going to be in a position where, at a different price point for some folks, but it will still be available come the fall. So just want to make sure that was out there in some form, and folks should stay tuned if you're a New Franklin parent to hear more from New Franklin channels, probably through Parent Square, about next steps. One of those next steps will be Seacoast Community School trying to understand how many parents are still interested in potentially taking advantage of that program, so they can start to build staffing as we go into the summer and prepare for the fall. So anyways, just want to make sure people are aware of that.
Thank you, Zach. Any other announcements? Lisa.
I have a few. First, I just wanted to let everybody know that our high school play is opening Friday night, Baskerville. It's a great Sherlock Holmes mystery for the whole family. They have shows Friday night, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. It's a really great opportunity to support our kids who are doing live theater and learning the sounds and lights and all those things. So that's a really great thing for everybody to go to. Eric Moore isn't here, but I want to give a big shout out to the whole art department and 3S who put together an amazing performing arts night on Friday that had students doing poetry and playing music and doing all sorts of things, and then highlighting all the artwork at the high school. And I also just really want to give a huge and heartfelt shout out to everybody at Portsmouth Middle School right now. Like, the whole staff has been dealing with a really hard tragedy, and from the guidance counselors to the social worker to the extra police officers who brought in therapy dogs, like that whole community in a really hard situation for all the adults in the school really put the kids first in an unbelievable way over and over again. And I just feel like we need to thank them for what was just a really hard situation to get through as a community.
Thank you, Lisa. That was very, very thoughtful that you brought that up. Thank you. I just wanted to talk a minute about some of the trips that our students went on during April vacation. Do you want to talk about that, Lisa?
Well, you might be stealing some thunder from some of the people in the audience later, but that's okay. That's all right.
Okay.
That's
No,
all
I
right.
don't want to
That's
miss
okay.
that.
That's,
I read the newsletter you put out every week, and it mentioned all the trips. So do you want us to hold off on that for a minute? Okay.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Save the sizzle for when people get up. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So stay tuned. They're really good trips.
Really good trip.
Anyone else have anything? Okay. All right. Thank you. And again, thank you, Lisa. That was very thoughtful.
Another thing I was just going to say really quickly is just we didn't meet last week, but last week was Teacher Appreciation Week for our staff, and so I just again want to say we have unbelievably talented people who work for us, and I'm so thankful to be here and amongst those professionals. They do a great job, and this has been. Lisa alluded to one event. This has been a really challenging year for folks, between some tragedies connected to students, to some family members of students that we've tried to weather. The whole process of our budget process this time around and the restraints put on by City Council that got us into, are we laying people off? What's going to happen? That was very different for our school community. There's just been a lot. People have really, and I've had that conversation with a lot of our folks. Last day for teachers is June 20th. And, I think there's going to be some, there's going to be some people peeling out of the parking lot and heading for summer. And I just really appreciate how people have weathered. We had multiple tough things, especially as we were just coming out of break. It was a couple of gut punches at the same time, and our staff has done a really good job of what Lisa said, putting kids first, going the extra mile for the community, and kind of toughing out some stuff that's just really at times soul-sucking. So I hope that we're going to come out of this stronger and in a position where next year we feel the weight lifted around as a result of just kind of being in a different space. But it's a real tribute to all the people who work for us, teachers, guidance counselors, support staff, that we continue to chug along through really difficult periods. And that's not by happenstance. That's because you have incredibly talented and thoughtful people who really deeply care about the youth of the community. And so I just wanted to, we as a board, you hadn't had an opportunity to be here during Teacher Appreciation Week, and I just want to make sure that messaging got out to all of our staff. So.
Thank you. Okay, I guess we'll move on.
I got one more, Nancy.
Oh, she's got one more.
I'm sorry.
No,
but-
that's
So
okay.
today was also our first Crossing Guard Appreciation
Yes,
Day in
it
Portsmouth
was.
because all of our 5th grade kids came together from all 3 elementary schools and lobbied City Council to make that happen. And if you had a kid who walks or bikes to school today, like they were giving the Crossing Guards balloons and cards, it was really cool. And that was something our students
Which is awesome.
which is pretty awesome. So good job, 5th graders.
And thank you for all those crossing guards. I mean, it's like as I
hard job.
It is, and there were some pretty cold and wet days where they're out there doing their thing, and super appreciative. Yeah.
Nathan, do you have something? You look like a
Oh, no, sorry.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 2 sets of minutes, April 22nd, 2025 non-public meeting, and April 22nd, 2025 regular meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those 2 sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We don't have to do roll call tonight because it's good. People are here. Okay, let's move on to public comment. Do we have anyone that would like to speak? You have 3 minutes, and if you could give us your name and address, we'd appreciate it. Sure.
Hi, my name is Anya Paulson. I live at 55 Thornton Street, and I'm here to talk about the MC3 situation. I appreciate you, Zach, talking about that. I have 2 kids at New Franklin School. I'm a working parent. My husband and I both work till 5 o'clock, and we have a 7 and a 9-year-old, and so getting rid of that was really gut punch during our vacation. Thanks for that. But anyway, I appreciate you saying that you're looking at a peak program. One thing that I was asking for is that I know that you're keeping MC3 at New Franklin, and my ask there and my challenge to you is, can we not separate the kids if at all possible? Because I feel like that's socially isolating for those who go to MC3 versus peak, and if we could at all bring it all together and not have the kids feel like they're in 2 separate programs, that would be really appreciated. So I appreciate you thinking of all of us working parents and how we need to have care for our kids until 5 o'clock when we're done with work, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else do we have any on Zoom?
No.
Patty?
Nobody
No one
here.
on Zoom.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the public comment session. Next, we have a presentation from our student representative to our board. Nathan, you have the floor.
Cool. Do you think it'd be possible to throw it up on the board up there? If we can Kenosi and Clara and I are all presenting together.
Who has it? Do you have a copy of it? Yeah, so you're in. You can pull it up.
So cute. I get the biggest kick out of it.
You have to enable share.
Is it just this? In the packet.
You're good. Yep, you're good.
This looks pretty good, doesn't it?
What's up, everybody? It's good to see you. So yeah, I'll just jump in then, and we'll kind of mix it up.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Claire's here with us. So I want to name the scale of this what we're about to present about increasing student voice. So, and it's a scale of change, a scale of time. So 3 years ago, I stood before the student council. It was my first meeting at student council. And I listened to what was happening in the agenda and all the events and things. And I got my time up on stage and I said to the whole entire student council group, I said, you know, I value everything you're doing, everything you're working on, all of the things that help create a wonderful culture, connecting our students. And I said, but I have a challenge for you. And that challenge is really about increasing student voice in the leadership of the school. Not just cultural things, not just student activities, but actual decision making. So 3 years later, we had an opportunity that we acted upon to get inspired, get information, and the team is here to talk about how 3 years later, we're ready to make some big changes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say I appreciate the way in which you guys want to present, and simultaneously, people at home will not be able to hear you unless you're at the microphone or a microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to ruin the Steve Jobs vibe, so I'm digging it. But all right. I'm just okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, so after, and why don't you come over now so we can actually jump right in. But yeah, when I made that challenge to the student council, it really was about what are we going to do and why, and what is the core driver of this change to put students in actual decision-making positions. And this is where we kind of landed as a team.
Yeah, so as Cap said, 3 years ago he went to us. It was my first meeting, it was my freshman year. And he mentioned a committee at Hanover High School. And it's one of the three governing bodies that they have there. They have admin, student council, and then this judiciary committee. And as inspired as I was during that time, we didn't actually make any forward progress on it after that until right before, I want to say, Christmas break. We started communicating with Hanover High. And it really was a rebirth of the thoughts that we were having 3 years ago. And the thoughts were, how can we add student voice and increase the types of conversations that we're having into something more than just building a culture, which is already very strong. So, as we just mentioned, we traveled to Hanover High. It was a group, us three, two other students, Zach, and Mr. Grossman from the high school as well. So we went there, and the Wheelers, which they may be on Zoom. One of them said they might be here. So I don't know if we can let them raise a hand or something. But we went there. It was strictly, what can you show us? Because we are coming in as a school who has a student council and then other leadership bodies, but student council isn't really a part of that. And what we learned was honestly one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. And I don't know if either of you want to jump in real quick. But we were able to see one of their meetings. They had staff in the back. They had admin in the back. The students were running the meeting. And not only were the students running the meeting, they made decisions on the student handbook. They made decisions on course weight. And it was all these things that we would never have conversations like that. And it was really inspiring to see that students are able to have those conversations. And as we go along, able to see how that reflected in this new plan that we have. You want to caveat off of that?
Yeah, I would just like to say that our visit at Hanover was eye-opening and extremely different from what we have at Portsmouth High School. And as a senior who's graduating and have been on student council and class president for the past 4 years, I was skeptical of Hanover's, how they run their student government and their high school, but I firmly believe after visiting and seeing all the wonderful things that they have going on, that if we adopted a model like it, that it would create a lot of positive changes that I feel need to happen to make not only student government run more smoothly at Portsmouth High School, but as a whole and as a student body, I think it would make a lot of people a lot happier and feel like they're having a positive impact on our school and our community as a town. So, yeah.
Want to jump in for this next part? And then we can all. This is basically what we already went through. Do you want to just jump to the plan?
Yeah.
Talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, after the time we had with Hanover, and Zach was there with us, and all of us left inspired, really, truly, like what was possible. We saw what was possible when you put students in leadership positions, real decision making. And so the team, the council team, the student team went back and really started brainstorming. And what you see here, and I'll let the students kind of explain some of the details, but the bottom four are really important because what we learned from Hanover, we also realized, and this was wonderful debates we had, Hanover's student leadership was born out of the 1970s, a very specific time in American history, and it inspired that. Very difficult for us to recreate all of those particulars in this year, in this day and time, but there were some really concrete things. So things like student voice and leadership in curriculum, student leadership and voice in budgeting, the student life committees, and that's fairly standard now, and then a deep commitment to administrative leadership for our students. So those are areas that are really new, emerging for us, and so I'll let the team kind of talk about the excitement about adding these to council.
Yeah, even before we went to Hanover, we knew that it wasn't something where we go to Hanover and we try and replicate that at Portsmouth. Not only was it culturally a different time in the 1970s, but it's also 50 years later, and they've evolved into what they have now. This idea that we've tried to put together on paper is our best form of what's going to work for us at Portsmouth and what's going to be most beneficial for us. We don't need to go super in depth to the top part because that's really already what we have. But these bottom four here I want to focus on. So right now, it's very much the ASC with curriculum, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's students, staff, admin on this committee at Portsmouth High, the Academic Standards Council. That's separate from Student Council. At one of the slides before, we talked about stakeholders in different bodies and how at PHS currently, they're fairly separate. And it gets bundled up in decision making, but also it restricts the conversations that other students can have. So with curriculum, we're going to have students come from their 4 student councils. If you need clarification with this, I can try and provide it. But they are going to join the Academic Standards Council, come back as reporters to the Student Senate, and that's just one example of how just simply conversations will evolve. And having these conversations will ultimately lead us to a place like Hanover is. And ideally, hopefully we can get there within, I don't know, the next 5-10 years, but it really is a form of what it takes on at Portsmouth. We don't have any firm expectations for what it's going to take. Budget and activities. So these students would help with club budgets. So right now it is the department heads?
No, just budget.
Just budget. Yeah, just budget. But there isn't really any student voice in those decisions. So this committee would deal with not necessarily every budget season having those conversations, but yearly, what we can do and what we can talk about at the next cycle to see what we need. Student life is more of all that culture that we're talking about. The rich culture that we have at PHS will stay in that committee. But you can see just from that how we have that, but we're expanding and we're moving far from just focusing on culture. Lastly, with the admin committee, at Portsmouth High, there's a newly named SLT, school leadership team. So just like the ASC, there's staff, admin, and students all on that. Student council would also go and join that committee as well. With the PHS administration serving as liaisons with the students, and that also expands our conversations. So altogether, it really gives us a firm starting point as to what we envision student council working as and being in the future, and this is our best crack at it. If you want to jump in.
Yeah. I'd also like to say that this model also, looking at it, promotes more inclusive, is more inclusive for all students, because before a lot of these committees were not open to students who aren't in student council. So you would still have our student council, and within that it would also create some focus for people within student council to find what they are truly passionate about and put their time and effort into, say, the committees that they find the most interesting and want to put all of their time and effort into, instead of sectioning off and not putting as much time and effort into each because they're forced to. So a lot of students can pick and choose what they feel most passionate about. And also within the committees, it's open to the whole student body. So not just student council. Like right now, I feel that the Senate, as it exists right now, a lot of people and a lot of students don't understand what the Student Senate is and what they do. And some people, or some students I feel, are maybe scared about putting in the commitment because they feel they have to do all of these committees. So sectioning them out into these 4 different ones can allow not only student council members, but also other members of the student body to join committees and feel like they're making impact into our school community. So,
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Like I said, the scale of change is real. And 3 years to get to this place, when we had a sophomore and a freshman at a meeting with a brand new principal saying, I want you guys to do more. I want you to help me lead this school. And even now, knowing we have this plan, we're presenting to the council. The students are the leaders in this. And there's places for them to land. That was the most important thing for me. So that having the Academic Standards Council and the school leadership team in established systems so that the student council members can join a functioning team and add value as it moves forward.
Can you just remind the board, I know every day you guys are living it, but the Academic Standards Council and then the leadership team, what are those things and what do they do right now and that students would be a part of?
Yeah, so 3 years ago, knowing that how important and how central all curriculum instruction work is, so I assembled a team of teachers and students and administrators to basically help facilitate conversations primarily on any new courses that wanted to be presented to the course catalog, any changes to courses. It could be, and now we're moving into all sorts of curricular operations, credit recovery systems, like getting some kind of consensus and plan in place. So that's the Academic Standards Council. They meet once a month. Shay's here and can talk about that in detail. And then last year, we basically presented to the faculty the school leadership team. And that was a team of faculty and students, again, to really kind of help shape. This came a lot out of the NEASC visit as well, as part of the school improvement planning, making sure we had stakeholder voices, we had participants. Parents will eventually join that team as well. So yeah, that's an emergent group, but we have a student body now on that team as well. So these 2 teams represent the core of the function of everything that's happening at Portsmouth. And again, led by students and staff at its center.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm excited. So the team is ready for questions too, if you guys have any. Yeah.
Any questions? Lee?
So just because I'm a little bit slow. So is the intersection there really the Academic Student Council or the Student Leadership Council? Or
Each one is.
Both?
Yeah, it's actually all 3. So the curriculum committee from the council side is actually the Academic Standards Committee, or council. Okay. So members of Student Council will formally join to be part of that. And the budget, specifically, that's that club budget, so the money that it's appropriated by the board to support clubs. So that's where they'll have a new voice in their own club student, budgets. Student life is all the stuff currently happening. And then the administrative committee, as defined here, is the school leadership team. And that's everything from handbooks, staff handbooks, student handbooks, procedural stuff that supports policy. Yeah, it's a really exciting opportunity.
So they're kind of the intersection, and then so there probably ought to be bi-directional arrows?
Yes, there'll be a whole lot more.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha, I gotcha.
As a flow chart, there'll be a much more,
Second, if you don't mind me asking a
Go
second
ahead.
question.
Absolutely.
How are you making sure there's equitable representation, especially from those that are somewhat marginalized in the school body?
So there's 2 parts of that. Nathan hinted at it.
Yeah,
so
please.
these are the elected representatives. So that's a dedicated group of kiddos.
Yeah. Those four orange circles are the 12 from each grade that are elected each year, and then there's 3 from each that go down to the green.
Okay.
Yeah, and then in those already established groups, we started with nominations from staff. And we specifically actually chose students that weren't in student council, who are active in lots of things. We actually really dug deep in terms of the whole population, finding really representative groups of kids. And that team, at least in academic standards, is self-perpetuating now. So kids have done multiple terms and then recruit other kids, and it's a pretty dynamic system. Yeah.
Anyone else? I have a question. Do you foresee the Budget and Activities Committee and the Student Life Committee, could they ever get involved in, for instance, when the school board sets its budget, we get input from all the schools. Could the students help you craft that as part of this, or is that going outside the?
I think it would be one of the things we talked about as a team. We brought up the manageable and dedicated focus of this initial attempt at eyes on a budget, and listening to budget managers and listening to club advisors and kiddos, and so knowing that one number, that $15,000 we use, is a really good step into. But absolutely, I would love for the student council to get eyes on the 109 budget, the high school budget, and really understand how that works. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
It was interesting, the day we had the Student Government Day, Lisa and I were together, and we were talking to students right outside there about, what do you think the cell phone policy should be at the high school?
Yeah.
What do you think the dress code should be at the high school?
Here
So
it
it's
is.
really cool to get the student
Yes.
perspective of that. And of course, our policy committee is examining those policies in the near future. So
Yeah.
that would be great if this committee could lend some input to that.
Yeah, they'd be at
So-
the table.
Right.
By virtue of this model, they'd be at the table thinking through the challenges. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Okay.
exciting.
Lisa?
Yeah, I kind of was going to follow up on what you just said, but it was a great part of Student Government Day to be able to sit with students who are being impacted by the policies and had really strong opinions and really different opinions from the group of kids on some of these policies.
Absolutely.
And so I'm looking at the idea of the administrative committee and potentially having some conversations about the handbook or about different types of procedures. So I'm curious if you envision any connection into what we do, because if we're setting a policy, that's going to impact what goes into your handbook. So I'm just curious, maybe down the road, what you think about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Jump in.
procedurally, this admin committee actually came from the idea of the JCOM initially, from what we heard about from you 3 years ago. The idea behind it, obviously with all these starting small and working towards it, I completely envisioned something like that.
That would be awesome.
In leaving, this has sort of been my baby the past few months, and leaving students at PHS with an opportunity to work with you all rather than just me would be amazing, because when you ask those students on Student Government Day those questions, that's the only time they're really going to have that conversation. They're not going to have it with student council, because that's not something that we would even think about having a
They
conversation
said
with.
so many surprising and really insightful and smart things. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
great to have that feedback.
That's interesting.
That's the goal in the long run.
Yeah.
And Nathan, correct me, you're a junior, correct? So you'll be with us next year. Unfortunately, you're graduating, so, but,
Unfortunately.
no, you're going on to bigger and better things.
Bigger and better
I'm sure.
things.
But I'm so passionate about this, and that's part of why I'm here. A lot of people and teachers have asked me, oh, why are you a part of this? You're leaving.
I was there today at lunch. They were like, "Why are you going?"
It doesn't matter. And for me, it matters greatly because I am so passionate about this. I'm so happy that Nathan included me in this and was just like, oh, she doesn't care, because I think this is such an amazing opportunity for our school and something that I think is going to make some significant positive changes. And I'm excited to come back and see all the amazing things that happen because of this. So hopefully it gets adopted in.
Well, thank you for all your hard work
Yeah,
on this.
awesome, guys.
and,
This is really good
thank you.
stuff.
We appreciate it. It shows that our students are so involved and passionate and, want to make our school a better place. So thank you, guys.
And as you're both talking about, students have very specific, they're the customer base, right? And they have very specific insights about what can make the school work better. So I think it's really exciting to have students more involved in all the different steps, particularly at this level. Because I think we could continue to improve or take a really good high school and continue to make it better through student voice. I think that's really powerful. So thank you, guys.
We have another comment. Byron?
I think it's fantastic, and I know that the school board members on the school board would, greatly welcome input from the students. And maybe this is part and parcel to the program that's put forth here, but I just want to put out there that often in like council style organizations, it's the loudest voices that often sort of take influence. And looking for ways for asynchronous input and asynchronous sort of more introverted, deep thought input into these discussions, I think is a worthwhile endeavor beyond the sort of more collaborative council style engagements.
Couldn't agree more.
Yep, key element.
Yeah.
Well said.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Nice
Appreciate
work.
it. Yep.
So we're jumping right in, or
Double feature from the high school
Okay,
tonight.
we're-
So
we're
yeah.
going. I think we're still live, right? Yeah, so I'm just excited and proud to present. We have a team here with us to talk about how we've kind of leaned into the portrait of the graduate and specifically the global and community connections. So we're really excited about that. What we're going to talk about is not just travel. I want to name that really specifically as you read this wonderful quote, because it's bigger than that. Travel is a key element and a life-changing element. So it is a centerpiece of all the good work at Portsmouth High School, but it's not just travel that is fatal to these things like prejudice and bigotry and narrow-mindedness. It's about connecting with people, and our work in global is right there. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is, one, that the community came back to us through the Portrait of the Graduate work and presented this particular element to us. It was wonderful, primarily because Portsmouth High School has led in this area for decades. We are, having spent almost 30 years in public ed in many schools, there is no school like Portsmouth High School in its global programming. None. Not one public high school I can name that has the connections, the deep, rich experiences for students like Portsmouth High School. So I'm very proud that both the community and the work that's happening in the school found its own synergy and connected in the most obvious and clear way and around this wonderful thing that we commit. So I'm going to have Shay come up and just continue on as we share this great work.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. So there's a term that we like to use, and it's the term GLOCAL, and that's think global, act local, and that's the essence of a lot of our programming at Portsmouth High School that we're really excited to share tonight, connected to global local citizenship. And I'm super excited that we have two teacher leaders here with us tonight that are going to walk you through some programming, some coursework, and some of our travel that's happened most recently. And those two teachers are Helene Wemple and Allie McGrimley, and I'm excited to welcome them up.
All right, hello, I'm Helene Wemple, and you can kind of see on the list, I guess, what I've done. I teach Spanish, and I've taught the service learning. You might have seen my name before with the Fulbright Columbia that I did a couple years ago. I've done numerous trip leaders, exchange programs, and other things that I've done. And most recently, I'm working with Allie on the Global Scholars Program, and that's mostly what we're going to talk to you about.
Hi, I'm Allie McGrimley. Also, I am Global Connect Advisor. We're working on building that program. Also, I'm in the Social Studies Department. I have also taught service learning. We've kind of shared that together. And then led a variety of different trips and international experiences along with Helene. So a lot of the information we're going to talk to you about tonight is actually housed in our website. So this is just a screenshot of the website, but when Steve and Shay started, as Steve just mentioned, Portsmouth High School has been a leader in global education for a long time, but a lot of the information and trips and whatnot, opportunities that existed for students were siloed. So, one teacher led this trip, someone else did this opportunity, and so on and so forth. And so they suggested that we house it all in one place. So creating the website, we wanted to offer information around the Global Scholars Program that we're in the process of building, also highlighting World Awareness Week and other PHS travel opportunities, so that it wasn't limited to students who had the teacher that led the trip, that they knew about it, but that way, again, this is available to all people to learn more about what we do around global education. So the Global Connect Scholars Program is Portsmouth High School's first academic endorsement program. So upon graduation, students that are part of the program will graduate as PHS Global Scholars. It will be an endorsement on their transcript given to them through the registrar, and it will also be displayed for colleges and whoever looks at transcripts beyond colleges. And so it's kind of unique. It is our own endorsement. It's not an endorsement from an outside organization. And as part of that endorsement, students have a path or list of requirements that they're required to hit that takes them through a variety of different opportunities in their 4 years connected to global learning. So it kind of lists some of them here. They have different requirements around world language study, immersive travel experiences, either through Portsmouth High School or outside organizations, service learning and community service, and a senior capstone research. Again, focused around local initiatives, and also kind of have focus on the UN SDGs. And as of right now, we are in our second year of the program. Last year was kind of an experimental year. We had one senior graduate from the program and be recognized as a global scholar, Rocky Capone. And this year we're very excited to have 7 seniors that plan to present their global capstone portfolios next Thursday on May 22nd during Block 4 and Flex. And they're excited to present and highlight their global journey throughout Portsmouth High School. And then ultimately, we've been meeting with our full group, grades 10 through 12, throughout the school year. We try and meet with them about twice a month during Flex, some for different enrichment opportunities around global initiatives, as well as advising them and helping them craft their portfolios that tell their global story. Am I missing? And then also part of this cohort of students that are going through the program, we're working on having them kind of step up as student leaders, especially around some of the initiatives that take place during World Awareness Week. So Helene is going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you were to open the portfolio checklist, which I won't do right now, that kind of lists the requirements of what needs to happen over a period of 3 years, because we really start presenting it freshman year, and then sophomore year is when they can join and become part of the group and start working toward the final endorsement. So one of those things is local service and local action within our school. And so one of the requirements is that every year they have to do 2 activities that show leadership in our school. And one of those opportunities is to be part of World Awareness Week. World Awareness Week has been happening at Portsmouth High School for probably about 15 years now. And it's changed in different ways depending on who's part of the committee and what we're doing. But it's super exciting to have a lot of students be part of it now and know what it is and know what we're doing. These are just, I know you can't see the details, but this year's World Awareness Week was April 14th to 18th. We came up with themes for different days. The top one is just all of the flex opportunities. So those were all globally related flex opportunities with guest speakers or activities or student-led conversations, teacher-led events, all sorts of cool stuff. And then we also had Fridays, kind of the big day, which is World Travel Day. That's just one example at the bottom of one block. But as you can see, 5 different teachers were talking about different and students or hosting students of travels they went on, and then teachers signed up with their class to go visit those presentations, and those happened every block of the day. So it was a really cool opportunity. And this year we had more student presentations than we've ever had during that time, and a lot of new teacher ones too. And so these are just a representation of kind of different things we did during the day. There was the Little Clippers did a really cool activity with one of the English classes. And then we had World Dance Day, where all of the language classes were dancing the last 15 minutes of the block. We had music going in the halls. And different types of presentations. It was super. And then the Global Summit, which I'll have Allie talk about, was also happened during World Awareness Week, and this was specifically for the Global Scholars.
Yeah, so this year, this was our third annual Global Summit, kind of modeled off of actually what Stephen Shea had done at their school in Andover. But the Global Summit this year was on Thursday of World Awareness Week, targeted towards our Global Connect students. There were some other students that actually chose to participate and join who were not yet part in the program, but now they want to be part of the Global Connect program, which was good for recruitment purposes. And the day is structured around a theme. This year's theme looked at tied to a global goal. So the global goal that we focused on this year was SDG number 12, which is responsible consumption and production. And that was actually chosen by students who are in the program. We had kind of asked them and primed them a few months earlier, what goals would you like to focus on? And then within that goal, are there certain topics that you were interested in looking at? So around SDG number 12, responsible consumption and production, students came up with some things. They wanted to look at fast fashion and textile waste and how that gets used, or how we can solve some of those issues around it. People were interested in food waste, specifically in Portsmouth, since we have so many restaurants and a lot of our students work in restaurants. They wanted to know how can we help at this local scale with all this food waste that we have. And then also, what was the third? Sustainable products. So we had someone from a refill store come in and talk about sustainable products and packaging and personal goods. So the morning half of the day was spent having these professionals that work in the field come in and share with our students, kind of led some hands-on workshops. One of them is, again, the Good Planet Apparel, actually a PHS alumni student. She came in, she runs a secondhand clothing store, so she ran a workshop with them to show how they can upcycle clothing and shirts into bags. We also had Gather come in and lead a workshop where the students actually prepared some pasta salad. It was like a buffalo chicken pasta salad. It was very good. But all the food had been donated to them and was going to be wasted by other organizations. They had donated that food, and then Gather showed us what they do, prepare it into a dish, and then that is offered in their pantry. So our students got to help do that, help package it, and then also had some of it for lunch, which was good. And then we had a few other guest speakers come in, one of whom was the founder of a clothing library at Dover Library, so people could rent clothes to, again, instead of purchasing more and whatnot. So then the second half of the day is a design challenge in which students have been given all of the information and kind of precedent research, and then are given the opportunity to think of how can they solve some of these issues and think forward. So looking at products that typically end up in the landfill, how can they be reused, regifted, recycled, repaired, so on and so forth. Where students don't just sit and talk about solutions, but actually come up with some prototypes of what they would want to create, and then also do student presentations to share out with the group. So it was an excellent day. A highlight. Students did a wonderful job and came up with really innovative solutions that I would not have been able to do. So.
Do you want to talk about the capstone as part of that?
Oh, well, actually, yeah. And so some of our seniors, so a few of the seniors who are in our program right now are planning to use some of what they did on Global Summit Day to highlight in their portfolios and tie it to their capstones. And ultimately what we hope long-term for the capstone is that students who are part of the Global Connect program, when they get to their senior year, will have participated in these global summits over the course of their tenure at PHS, and will have started to develop an idea of certain global goals that they're passionate about and have thought of solutions and things so that they can focus their capstone around a topic that maybe has come up before. So.
Awesome. Oh, whoa. Okay. Here we are, Nancy, the exciting part. So as part of the Global Scholars Program, we asked that every student during their 4 years either travels or hosts a student, so has some kind of direct international experience with somebody. And as Mr. Canosi said, we are very, very lucky to have very many travel opportunities and hosting international opportunities at Portsmouth High School. Very lucky. So as part of the website, you saw the World Ready Hub. At the top, there was a little link, and this is just a screenshot from what has happened last year and this year. And again, we have numerous trips for numerous groups of people. Some are specific to language, some are open to everybody. So for all different types of trips that we really try and open up to the whole school. And so we also have domestic opportunities. This year was the Disney trip, which is what that picture is of. And then there's also for many years now been a hiking club trip to the Presidential Range, which are the domestic trips. So this year, or end of last year, this year, we've had over 200 students travel to somewhere, whether domestic or international, on a Portsmouth High School trip, which is really amazing to be given that opportunity. Here's just some. A lot of these trips, all of these trips, I would say, are very much about getting to know the people, going into the schools, learning about the culture. These are not touristy trips. These are very much becoming part of the community. How does our community meet with your community and become friends and make lifelong relationships? And then we also have a whole bunch of opportunities for hosting. So for some of the students that can travel, we also host. Some of these programs have become direct exchange programs, like the Puerto Rico trip, the Italy trip, and then this is a large group of students from Japan who came this year. So it's really cool that we have these opportunities to be able to host as well as travel, and that they've become relationships that we have with these schools around the world. I'll also add in here that we have numerous pen pal things going on. I know a French class and a Spanish class have been doing pen pal letters, and apparently the French trip was doing pen pals with a school in Normandy, and then this past trip in April they went to that school and met their pen pals and got to do homestays in that town. So it's pretty cool, and I've been doing a similar thing in Puerto Rico for many years, where students write letters and then eventually we do the trip and they come here and we go there. And then on top of it, we have these PD opportunities for teachers. And because I've always said, if you can't bring your students to the world, how do you bring your world to the students? And how do you do that? Through the teachers. And so you need to bring teachers to the world to be able to have them bring it to the students in their classroom. So we've also been really lucky to be able to have some PD opportunities, both in Costa Rica and most recently in Zimbabwe. We had 22 teachers from SAU 50 and 52, which was really cool to work across the two SAUs on this trip, which was a total global education experience. And there's a lot of things happening still from that trip, of things that people have created and ideas and collaborations that are happening because of that opportunity. So that is the travel piece to it.
So I'll just jump in and say a little bit about that as well. And Helene mentioned it. The exchanges are what makes a world of difference. So our trips, the PHS trips, are not tours. There are no vendors. Our kids, our teachers are embedded in communities, are spending a week with families. It's profound and life-changing. I just got back from the Japan trip, and all I can say is, yes, that's exactly what happens. The kids come back different. They come back better. They come back connected. As Helene was saying, the relationships that we form, both on a professional level as well. So all of us who've participated in this, we reach out to our colleagues around the world to talk to them, to connect with them, to share ideas, to prepare for trips and plan together. So a lot of this specifically is connected to the City of Portsmouth Sister City Program. And it's an amazing thing. So I sit on that committee, that City Council subcommittee, and it's wonderful to connect. And these are the two big ones. There's lots of friendship in sister cities as part of Portsmouth. These are the two that the high school is most directly connected to and work really hard on. Nichinan, obviously we have a 40-year relationship with the city of Nichinan, and that is all rooted in a 120-year history since the Portsmouth Treaty. And I can tell you that across the city of Nichinan, which is significantly larger in population than Portsmouth, and maybe in area as well, all over the city this year, because of those years, those anniversaries, there were giant banners, 8 feet tall, all over the city celebrating 40 years with Portsmouth, 120 since the treaty. The whole city celebrated, and it was really remarkable to be to represent Portsmouth. I think our students understood the historical significance of that they were responsible for a wonderful legacy that's in the hands of Portsmouth High School, along with the whole city, to go to Nichinon and represent, and it was just a beautiful thing to witness. Our more recent partnership with Sant'Arcangelo in Italy, another Roots creation right here in Portsmouth. Our students and faculty went this February. Nathan was on that trip as well, and life-changing.
Still can't put into words months later, so
Yeah.
I won't blabber off. Keep going.
Yeah, so that's a remarkable. I had an opportunity. We hosted the students and the teachers here as well, and I've gone to both cities now and spent time with the mayor and the city council and teachers at the local schools. And this is something we're really proud of. It's something that the schools, our contribution to the city is really significant, right? I mean, this is the work of teachers and students in both cities, in all 4 cities, essentially. So, I just wanted to mention that because this is really connected and connects our high school to the larger group. So,
Can you just stay on that for a second? Because I just want to push on a point for an audience beyond this room, which is that as Portsmouth has an interest in being kind of a global municipality, these relationships, the most rich, if you go to the sister city lists, the ones that are rich are the ones that are very much embedded at PHS.
Yes.
And because that's where ongoing human connection is occurring, is between those groups of people. Yeah. So I think, I know that we have a strong interest in exploring the possibility of having a more robust relationship with some of the other friendship cities that are on that list. And to expand what we're going to do, we will need, I think, it won't, when we comes to budgeting and kind of planning, what we go into some of these other communities, the municipality has a bigger role in those other places. And this is not a criticism of us, it's just we're learning. When we go to Nichinon, we know that the entire municipality is involved in that relationship. Yeah. You know, and they host a large banquet for us coming to visit, funded by the city. Yeah. And all kinds of people come out, and the municipal officials are part of that whole thing. In terms of our relationship with Italy, we've had the consulate involved. So sometimes we are in situations, I think, that are fair where the work that we're doing through teachers and through students, we sometimes feel like we're not necessarily as a community, we are not rolling out the red carpet in the same way the places we go to visit are doing for us sometimes. Yeah. And we'll need the assistance of the city government, not just through the committee, but I think in terms of talking about having a plan that kind of puts some resources, both financial resources and also then kind of programming resources behind some of these things if we want to continue to grow these opportunities, both to expand it out into a larger number of students, where we're not talking about 200 students, which is amazing, and we're saying a third of our student body on an annual basis is hosting or going out to other places, and our school board and our school budget, but our municipality as a whole is engaged in that process and excited about that process, and helping create kind of a perpetual motion machine around those opportunities. So want to stay positive on anything, but also say there are opportunities that we're not yet taking advantage of outside of the scope that PHS can control.
Yeah. So. No, and it's exciting. It's exciting to gather that data with each trip and with each hosting. Today, both Nichinon and Sant'Arcangelo confirmed they'll be back in Portsmouth High School back-to-back weeks in October. So we are ready for the party.
Everybody's exhausted when we finish those couple of weeks.
The global party begins in October, and we're excited to see our friends come back and join us. And so, it is exciting. And it is, I think the evidence we're gathering as a high school to share back with the city is profound. And I think they're listening, really. I think it's actually happening.
And I think in some cases, we've got the talent amongst our staff, which you're seeing some of right here, to give us the resources and we'll do the work.
Yeah, we're excited, we're ready.
You know, I mean, help us too, but
Yeah.
but we're ready to go
Yeah.
if you can provide the resources to help us make some of these things happen.
It's very
So-
exciting, very exciting. So, continuing, we're just going to talk about how this isn't just about travel, and that, like Helene said, we bring the world to our classes. So it's not just about all this extra, it's actually becoming part of the daily learning at Portsmouth High School.
Yeah, so just to keep building off of the global citizenship piece, it's really important to us to embed this programming in our program of study. So I just want to highlight a couple of things that are happening that are new and exciting. So we have a 9th grade class in our social studies department that we've revamped, and it's now called the Global Leadership Course. And every 9th grade student is going to take this class. It's a freshman seminar style course, very similar to how Allie described the Global Summit. So it's based on global challenges that we're currently facing and students becoming solutionaries in that work. So we're really, really excited about that. It's all based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We also have another team of interdisciplinary teachers that are building a course that expands off of that as another elective class. It's called the UN SDGs in Design Challenge. Oh, sorry. It's the next one. And the next program of studies is called the United Nations Global Challenges and Solutions, and that's going to be an extension course that kids can take as an elective class. We're really excited about that, into building a sequence of courses that align. There are also a whole bunch of globally centered electives that not only can our Global Connect students take, but any student at Portsmouth High School can enter into these classes. Just to highlight a few of them, our capstone course is one that is globally focused if students choose to. We have a new history and mystery class that is a globally focused class where students are digging into local history and then using a capstone style course and research to explore our local history and mysteries. We have global chemistry and a whole series of electives for students to choose from that we're really excited about. So there really is access to all of this for all students, and we're excited to keep building off of that. And just to quickly recap and talk about next steps, some things that we want to do, one really big piece is teacher and student reflection and feedback tools post-travel. It's a very transformative experience to explore with a group of students and teachers, and then to come back, we really just want to make sure that we're reflecting and learning and continuing to grow those practices. There's other opportunities that we're exploring as well, considering becoming an IB school and exploring what that could look like, building on our civic action projects. The Clipper Foundation just granted the Global Connect program, gave us a grant next year so we can expand our programming and keep growing. We want to keep expanding on our capstone research. And we are a member school of the Institute of Global Learning, and for the past 3 years, we've brought teams of teachers from the high school to those educator conferences, and we've been building that team, and we'd love to expand that to a district level. So we're really, really excited for what's ahead, and appreciate your time tonight to share some of the work that we're doing.
Just before questions, I was going to say one more thing that was really important for this group. Whenever we're engaged in these conversations, the core functions of the board, creating policy, developing a budget, supervising employee number, this guy, there are a bunch of financial investments that have made some of these things possible, and those include being supportive of sabbaticals, for example. Both Ms. McGrimley and Ms. Wimple have been beneficiaries of a board that is supportive of the idea that folks are going to go out and continue to learn professionally and reach out to help create some of these opportunities. Also, the Institute for Global Learning, it's an investment. We make an investment in being a member. We make an investment in sending teachers to those experiences. So there's a lot of choices we make. This doesn't just happen by happenstance. It has to be supported financially. It has to be supported through policy. It has to be supported through how we think about the role of a teacher and what's appropriate for the public to spend money on to help enhance their talents and put them in a position to to be empowered to run and create these types of opportunities for students. So whenever we do these types of things, I want to make sure we're always coming back to there are things the board has done through the mechanisms you have that help make this stuff happen. We can't lose track of it. We can also be thoughtful about what else can we do that will expand these opportunities going into the future. So, sorry, Lee, I didn't mean that. Cut off your question.
Lee?
I just want to make sure I'm not hogging.
No,
So,
go ahead.
Number one, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate this and both how it aligns with the mission from our school and as well, how it aligns with the approach that we want to take from a student standpoint. Having lived abroad, having made friendships in Taiwan and India and China that are lasting forever, I find this really exciting and really important. I will say the thing that I'm wondering is is it accessible to kids with disabilities? Being a parent of a child with some disabilities, especially physically, is there opportunity and have there been opportunities for kids or students with disabilities? Number one, and then number two, I really love the aspect of having the tie-in with STEM that you have, especially from a learning standpoint locally. One of the things that I experienced as a master's program in international business was actually an idea that I'd like to throw out there, which is the challenges here are very different than the challenges in, say, rural India. And so one of the things that I'd like to throw out there is actually realizing and recognizing what those differences are, and perhaps even having a challenge to students as a capstone even perhaps, which then addresses and lets them think creatively about how to solve some of those problems that are very different in other communities. So I really love what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you. Specifically to that last point, I'll just say quickly, there's also a reverse of that. There are solutions around the world that can be applied here.
Yeah.
And so having our kids go out in the world and seeing, wow, they fixed mobile banking across Africa 15 years ago.
Yeah.
What could we learn, right? So yeah, I think there is this great opportunity both to understand the challenges in other places, but also see solutions that could be modified and bring back home. And then in terms of trips and accessibility, absolutely. I think there are trips, both whether it's a physical difference, whether it's other disabilities that students struggle with, and we adapt and we work with parents through all of that. There are some trips that are maybe more rigorous or more rural, and but then we have very city, modern, all accessible resources as well. So yeah, that's a constant conversation for us.
Yeah, and even from the standpoint of, and I'm sorry to jump back in without raising my hand, I apologize. Even ways to support families that have children with disabilities that may want to sponsor a child coming here.
Yeah,
and be a
hosting.
part.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool. Yeah.
Thank you, Lee. Lisa?
Yeah, I just want to thank you. I mean, my junior went on the trip to San Juan and had an absolutely transformative experience. We've taken this child all sorts of places, and they are very much a city kid. They hate bugs, they hate dirt, And then they go into the jungle with their, host family in San Juan, and suddenly are like, this is amazing. And, I think it opened up possibilities where they could see themselves more as an adult and more as somebody with a future that could be global. And I mean, they literally went to an art school in San Juan, and now they're looking at colleges to study art and Spanish, and it makes them see possibilities. And so I really hope that we support this as much as we can. And I think the one question that I wonder about, which is probably more a question for us and a budget question, but there are families that don't have the resources to host and who don't have the resources to pay the fees for these trips. And I know that we do have the Opportunity Fund, but do you think that there's other ways that we can open this up to more people who, may not be able to, feed another kid for a week, or may not be able
Elaine
to
ready
pay
to go.
the-
She's ready to,
No, I know.
ready to rip on this one.
Because there are a lot of kids who I think just don't apply because they think this is not me and this is not my family who does this.
Right, yeah, no, we think about that all the time.
I know you
All
do.
the time. I would say, and this kind of answers back to your question, is the trips that we do, we run them. We don't go through companies, which is why like Mr. Canosi was saying, we can talk to the parents, we can talk to the families, we can make this work out, what's the best for the people going. So we do have the Opportunity Fund, which has been very helpful for students. On top of it, the World Language Department has, for our trips for the past, I don't know, I want to say 20 years of trips that I've been doing them, when we come back, because we're running the budget ourselves, when we return, if we have money left over, we ask the parents, do you want the money back or do you want to give it toward a scholarship fund for the future? 90% of the families say give it toward the future. So we have now built a pretty robust scholarship fund that we use for the language trip. So that has also been helpful. Again, doesn't fully cover the trip, but there are ways. We also do have a lot of the programs that a lot of the trips come up with their own fundraising activities, which also can offset some of those costs. So that's where there is some budget for it and some help in those. And then Allie has another one.
And then that was something we were also really conscious about as we were forming the Global Connect Scholars Program. We didn't want that requirement of an immersive travel experience to feel limiting to students that, oh, well, my family doesn't travel, so I guess I can't be a global scholar. So in part of writing the Clipper grant for next year, we were able to get funds to be able to host 4 field trips throughout the school year of local cultural immersion. So students who are part of the program who can't afford to do one of the international trips will be able to use those 4 opportunities or those 4 field trips to use in their portfolio as their culturally immersive experiences. So getting them to different cultural areas locally that they have the same opportunity. So,
But I think there's a conversation to be had about the transformative opportunity when Delaney can't articulate something. I get nervous, right? I get nervous. So, that's how powerful it is.
It's Steve Jobs.
That's right. That's how powerful. But that's how powerful an experience it is. And so, we should be thinking about how do we make the cost not an issue for all, because we do have the Opportunity Fund, but we're always conscious of the fact about we haven't just said anybody, right? We're still case by case looking at those situations because the concern is we don't know if we'll be in a situation where we'll tap out the Opportunity Fund. And so I'd like us to be moving towards a model where it's not murky for families. It's like, this is a thing we're going to be able to do. It doesn't matter where we are in terms of our family income. This is a part of what we believe about as what we believe as an educational institution, and we know this is an unbelievably transformative experience for all kids, particularly kids who don't have the financial ability to be regulars in Boston, to have been to New York City, to have been to wherever. Particularly for those kids, it's just like the world opens. Right. And so, that's going to be as we go. And these guys are doing amazing work with the tools that are available to them financially to try to identify students who are going to go on the trips and then make that work. It would be great for us as a district, as an institution, to create structures and put money behind not making them try to MacGyver it, which is kind of where we're at right now. And so that might be a good, as we move into earlier budget conversations in the fall, the early fall, and we start talking about strategic investments in pursuit of our Portrait of a Graduate in our strategic plan. Those are maybe the types of conversations we want to have. How do we start to seed more money for students to be able to have this opportunity?
And I just want to add really quick to that note. Our trips, having run trips and worked with vendors and done homegrown trips, our trips are at least $1,000 cheaper than any vendor trip, and it's on the backs of the faculty who work above and beyond to make all of that. And it's not just money saving, it's a better trip. It's more connected, it's more community based. So the savings is wonderful. What they get for that, because of the staff's efforts, is remarkable. Yeah, there's nothing like it. So
I would love us to have that budget conversation, because I do think that some of these trips, I mean, the one that my child went on, this was relationships that you had with teachers in Puerto Rico, and so they were able to make connections with students in a public school there and have homestays, and it definitely brought the cost down, but it also made the experience way richer.
Way better. Yeah.
They were with the family for the whole time, speaking the language and figuring things out in that way.
And there's some policy stuff in there too. I mean, so because I can because we've been trying to figure out what does that mean. When are we crediting staff? Are we treating it like as a professional development opportunity where we would utilize funds that would normally go to like a UNH course, but instead it's going to some of this? Do we as an institution feel good about that as a thing? And I think, and other ways in which we can incentivize staff to continue to be part of this work, because a lot of it right now is driven by the intense commitment to these ideals that like these two women have to these experiences, and folks like Laura LaValle and connected to the Japan program, where it's like this is a year-round thing. They're constantly planning, constantly having conversations, constantly finishing up one trip and rolling right into the planning process of the next. Or we've got inbound people coming back to us. Tons of work that's involved in all that stuff. And how do we make that something that is rooted in the institution and not just on the Herculean efforts of people who are passionate about these types of projects? Because I think the outcomes they speak for themselves. So.
Okay, we have Nathan, Brian, and Byron.
Yeah, the first thing, the points that you made, Dr. McLaughlin, a few minutes ago on the involvement of the municipality, it's a dire need. And we have a working group. It's focused more on the trips coming in October, but we're hoping to have a broader scope as well about what we need from the city, not even down to the financial aspects of it, but to walk in, the first thing that I see when we get to our host city is the government in their version of a city hall there, and the regional all the representation that they had, and then their goodbye trip that we hosted was in our library. So right. it's getting those resources amped up, and where we can get those from, and have the city help with that. Secondly, the student, because I'm not going to focus on just the trips, Global Connect as well. But the students that go on the trips, as one who went on one fairly recently, you realize the role that you play as a global ambassador to these cities. And it's an experience that when we're talking about, even with going with another organization, that even that doesn't give you that opportunity. In that sense of going in and communicating with these people, and you're strengthening this international relationship, that's what makes it so special. And my inability to articulate can be summed up by this. My mom had a 13 colonies rule on me for college. Think about that for a second. And then I went to Italy, came back, and now this summer I'm going on a trip to Italy to look at Italian universities. It's summed up that's how special it is. And then lastly, Global Connect is literally a place where all of these people who are globally motivated and who want to have these conversations come together and work together to find the resources and then to find the answers to these global issues. And it's one of the most special opportunities that I've ever been a part of. And it's one of the coolest opportunities that we have at Portsmouth High as well. So all the work that we...
on a Friday afternoon, and they all come and chat and hang out.
Yeah, it's a Friday afternoon, and then you have a group of 30 students in Mr. Grimley's room all working together. So it really is really special.
Thank you, Nathan. You have a lot of enthusiasm. Cheer up. Thank you. Brian.
Just a couple of comments. I think this is super important. I know it's totally congruent with what we said in terms of Portrait of Graduate, our goals. And I hear you in terms of, it's great that these passionate teachers, administrators are like kind of spearheading this, but it's not rooted it's not institutionalized. And so you guys won't be with us forever for whatever reason, or you'll, maybe stay with us for a long time and retire, but you're not, with us forever. So I hear that. And that, resonates with me. In terms of how do we institutionalize it if it is a part of what we say that is important. For me personally, I grew up pretty, I wasn't economically couldn't travel. I grew up in Maine, so I would say by the time I was like 17, I had traveled maybe roughly 50 miles away from my home. So New Hampshire, going across the border into, across the bridge was a big deal. And that was kind of neat, or going into Boston for the first time. So I understand those experiences are really transformative, just even going to bigger cities around in the U.S. And it is funny because I've had a chance to travel around the world since then. I've been to Asia and Europe, and just talking about the experience, like a street food in Beijing, where I'm eating a snake off a stick, and then talking to people about very common experiences that we all have, and common worries and common things, and it helps you connect better with people, makes you a better person, makes you a more effective leader, makes you an effective person. Most businesses are international. I worked in a lot of international businesses, and even, had a chance to go into South America. And it's funny because they all think we are cowboys and have guns on us all the time. And you're like, how do you guys navigate that with, so even changing those misconceptions of us and what they have formed. So and it allows us to see, especially as a kid, the opportunities beyond, I was a Portland, Maine kid, so opportunities way beyond that. Just seeing those different opportunities is great for kids to get. So I'd love to institutionalize this somehow. And it's great the work that you guys have done, but it's a lot of work. I recognize that, but the passion's there, and it's great that you were able to spearhead this, and it's great. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Byron?
Yeah, very well said, Brian. And I also, in those high school years, we didn't do a lot of traveling in my family. The opportunities I had were through a church, but what I found in the trips that were associated with, like aged folks towards a specific focus, and someone much smarter than me said that there's great magic in focus. And I think, the crucible that occurs when you have a group of people in a specific place at a specific mission really is formative, and I have a ton of gratitude towards the individuals who are driving this. Just relative to the city's role in this and finding a way to motivate the city, potentially, and also crossing over with what Brian is saying around finding a way to institutionalize the specific program. I think the customer would do well to express to the city, the need and ultimately the value of investing in this. And I think that would go a long way in motivating the representatives at the city level. And I'd love to see if this does become systemic, that it's across both the city and the school department specifically.
Thank you, Byron. Anyone else? Thank you all. That was a great presentation. I just want to say, I've been on the board for a long time, and the question of providing funds for students that can't afford it, it comes up all the time. So it's great to hear that so much progress has been made to allow students to go on these trips that might not be able to afford it. So I remember that question being brought up for many years. And I just want to say, my 3 kids, my older daughter, Jackie, went to Japan when she was a junior with Mayor Eileen Foley, who was the woman in our city. She was the mayor, and she's the one that formed the relationship with Nichinan. So my daughter got to go with her on her last trip. She died not too long. Well, I don't remember, but that was the last trip she took to Nichinan.
And Mary's grandson was on this year's trip.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Psycho
great.
was-
Oh,
yeah,
that's
a really
cool.
special trip.
Yeah. So that was special because they kind of put out the red carpet because Eileen was there, which I know they still do today. But anyway, that was a very special trip. And my daughter Diana, Helene, went with you how many times? I think she went twice. She went on 2 trips.
Twice to the same country.
Okay, okay. But I always brag that when my daughter graduated from Portsmouth High School, she could speak Spanish fluently. And, she loves Spanish, so she went all the way up to advanced Spanish in the coursework, but then certainly those trips highlighted her ability to speak Spanish. When she graduated from the high school, she was fluent in Spanish. And my son, Lee, who is, as you know, and everyone knows, is 36, he's got Down syndrome. He went on a couple of trips when he was at the high school, and one of them was to Disney World when the band and the chorus went. Again, it was a huge group of kids that went that year. So because he had a paraprofessional assigned to him full-time, the school district had to provide that for him when he went on these trips. And there were several kids that were in that group, so finding the paraprofessionals, can be challenging because, they might not be available. So that particular year, the principal of the high school said, I'll be Michael's paraprofessional. So Michael hung out with the principal the whole time. So I went to the bus to pick Michael up. When he came home, the bus picks him up at Logan and brings him to the high school. My son gets off the bus and he has no eyebrows. And I said to the principal, what did you do? So he said, Nancy, he went in the bathroom with an electric shaver. He put an electric shaver in his suitcase, and he came out of the bathroom with no eyebrows. So I said, you did a great job with my son. It was so funny. We laughed so hard. So anyway,
It just goes to show you can't trust a principal to do a paraprofessional's job.
No, right?
That's right.
Qualified.
It was funny. But anyway, the trips for my children, my daughter who went to Japan, she's 37, she still talks about it. We'll be sitting around the kitchen table and all of a sudden she'll say, when I was in Japan, we did such and such, and it's just amazing what the benefit is for people that, can travel, so.
I was going to want to say, in the midst of all the trip conversation, I want to bring it back to, though, the curricular work that's being done. Yeah. So the trips are an opportunity, but that when those opportunities are embedded in already working with students about how to think about themselves as a global citizen, and to think about how, and then to take that and then to either the trip is an entry point to that, or the trip somewhere in that journey reinforcing those ideas, or like they kind of thought they abstractly had it figured out, and then they hit the ground and it's like, oh, I did have this figured out. I way didn't have this figured out at all. Those types of opportunities embedded with curriculum is another different type of thing in terms of what PHS is trying to do compared to other places. So in the midst of the magic of the trips, this curricular work is super important and a real difference maker too.
And that's how you institutionalize it.
Absolutely. Right? Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Wonderful
Appreciate it.
presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. We are on to the data security presentation by Tom and Patty. Correct.
I'm just
Tom's
introducing
gonna
Tom. He's
Tom's
got
gonna
it.
follow up the sizzle
He's
of
got
trips.
it.
Yeah, with data security,
which is
just like
Very exciting.
Tough work, Tom.
Very exciting.
I mean, come on, that's not fair, really.
And it's not. It's not. We should.
All right, Tom Lotz, I'm the IT
Well, it's
manager here.
gigabytes traveling through wires, so.
And yes, I get to talk about data security. So, yeah, luckily all of this, you're right, all of this stuff that we're doing right now is all data, which is great. So every year we take a look at our data privacy or data governance plan. And this year we don't really have any updates to the plan itself directly. However, there were a couple of updates to some of the plans that then calls, or the procedures. So we have our data secure disposal procedure, and also our data encryption procedure. And so our data secure disposal standard basically talks about how it's important to protect, obviously, against data loss. We have, one of the things that we try and do to make this a little bit easier on us is actually to make sure that we push more and more data to the cloud, primarily to our Google Cloud, so that the information is actually stored there and not on the local laptops. Also with Chromebooks, primarily it is stored in the cloud anyway. So that's one of the things that we try and do. However, obviously there's a small hard drive on the laptops. Anytime that we dispose of that, or we dispose of another piece of equipment, or we go to reuse it, we've got to make sure that we're handling that data properly. So if we're reusing it, we can just clean it. If we're going to clear it, purge it, or destroy it. If it's leaving the district, we're definitely destroying it. The encryption standard actually refers to the data that's at rest or the data that's in transit. So the data that's at rest on the Chromebooks, we encrypt all of the hard drives on the Chromebooks so that if something happens in a laptop, sorry, did I say Chromebook or laptop? Laptop. If a laptop is misplaced, stolen, et cetera, the drive is encrypted and that data is not accessible. Also, this comes into play whenever we transfer information from our systems to another system, because we interface with a lot of online systems. So we want to make sure that all that data transferred over to the other systems is encrypted in transit. So that's the fun part on the policy. In other news about cybersecurity, so I recently had an opportunity to be at our New Hampshire Regional Cyber Defense Training, and some fun things we talked about. Luckily, we don't use PowerSchool. I'm just going to say that up front. We didn't, so we weren't caught up in that breach. However, I think it's a good thing to be aware of that the data that was supposed to be deleted by the ransomware folks actually wasn't deleted, now that some of that information is starting to show up in financial crimes against recent graduates and things like that. So I think it's just a good idea to be aware of these things happening out there, and know that, for God forbid anything like that happens around here, but if it does, anytime a company offers you to use the credit monitoring benefits and things like that, definitely take them up on it, because the information from the youth is valuable to them for multiple years. Another fun little thing that you guys might have heard of is deed registration fraud. Not that it has anything to do with schools, but it's another thing that's out there. You probably have heard some advertisements and such, and you think, oh, that'll never happen. Well, apparently it's happened over 200 times in New Hampshire over the course of the last 2 years. So just something to be aware of. And of course, ransomware, as we know, continues. And the big thing, of course, is a lot of organizations out there are doing ransomware as a service. So it becomes a lot more difficult to negotiate with the folks who actually have ransomed the data. So our main focus, of course, is to try and stop that from happening to begin with. Which is why, again, we're focusing in on cybersecurity this year, and putting a little bit more into our managed detection and response. That's what I have. It's not that exciting.
No, it's good. No, it's great, Tom. Because I failed to, as you were coming up, remind members who have been on the board for a little bit, and then we have a new member, and just that part of this presentation is responding to, we have a data governance and security policy at the board level that says that on an annual basis by June 30th, that will come back and discuss any changes to our existing policy, and so our existing plan. No changes to the plan, but also to have this other information, I think, is pretty important. And I think you will remember Tom came as part of our budget, was one of our kind of focus areas this year on our budget conversations, and we talked a bit about the investments that were kind of the third-party kind of security help that we were looking at in relation to those things. I will also mention, too, as part of the city's conversation, that the city at the moment has a data security position that is part of the city manager's proposal. That position is then, if passed, each of the different departments would be paying, I think it's 20% of the cost of that position, which was not something we included in our budget conversations. So it's something Brian's trying to work on in terms of what would it look like. Is it 20%, Brian?
For us, it's $32,000.
$32,000. So we're working now to try to figure out a way where if the budget stayed the way it is in the 2.9% version, it's the 2.9% minus another $30,000 for a portion of a person. I think longer term, after we get through this position, there's some good conversation to be had about when can this is a structural issue. It's not about data. When can the municipality create a position and then effectively send us a bill for a position that they feel is necessary for us? So we did not have a robust part of that dialogue as part of things this last time around. We did not include it as part of any of the budgets that we presented to you. But in the manager's budget, it includes this position. So I think a thing for us to have conversations in the future about beyond this particular position is, when can the municipality do that? We've decided that for all of you, charter departments included, this is a necessary thing, and now we're going to basically invoice you for a portion of this role. But there's a different conversation. But I would say there's two things, including that in the manager's budget, and then what you already passed. That's even in the 2.9%. It was $72,000 for us to work with a vendor that would help us with ongoing kind of monitoring of our systems. So, any of that wrong, Tom? I just want to make sure.
No, that's okay. You're right on.
Great.
Let's have some questions. Byron, Lisa?
I guess so. First,
Lee. I'm sorry. Byron, Lisa, Lee.
Is it me?
Yes. Yes.
So I'll start with the city position, data security city position. Do we know what the intended working relationship between the school's IT and this new data security, like what's in terms of like what the output is supposed to be, or like what the
I would say specific in terms of the specifics. No, I would say broadly we've had good conversations. I think Ryan Babcock, who runs the city side of the IT operation, I think we've had productive, broad conversations about our relationship and how we can support one another. I think that there's another dialogue that's going on at the moment at the governance committee level of the council. The governance committee is overseeing charter revisions and ordinance revisions that are related to some of the structures of government. So one of the things that we have been engaged in a couple of governance committee conversations were the potential rewriting of one of the ordinances, which would have put city IT by ordinance in overseeing all the charter department work, which would have included us as well. So we went to the governance committee, expressed our concern about that potential rewrite, and the governance committee met again yesterday, but was not going to take any action, or that's what I was told. They would not be taking any action, and they were going to look at a new set of language around that particular ordinance, and it was connected to human resources and IT. We have expressed our belief, one, that the language that was written we don't feel is necessarily reflective of what's in the charter, and that we have concerns about the ability of city IT to oversee our operation, which for the most part is a bigger operation, and has more users, has different platforms, has different needs. And so our suggestion to the governance committee was that any language change that would come out of that conversation should be about a collaborative relationship between the existing IT departments. And that's what we felt was appropriate at that time. I think there was some expression from municipal officials that they would like to expand in this way, and they think it's necessary for those systems to move in that direction. I think one of the things I expressed was that was that I didn't think it was necessarily prudent to have a aspirational statement about operations in ordinance. That instead we should, if there comes a time where becomes the appropriate approach, that is the way that we should go. But that this is not that time, and there's a conversation to be had with this board and with the commissions around whether or not that would be the appropriate course. So, anyways, so that's also happening on the side right now.
Thank you. And I had one question, a little in the weeds. Sorry.
Police is also part of that IT
yeah.
They are.
So in the data at rest, in the encryption standard document, 5, it talks about minimum browser support in Appendix C, and then Appendix C lists a bunch of encryption algorithms. Is the encryption algorithm just like what's the browser needs to support at a bare minimum, or is there supposed to be an actual list of browsers there?
No, it's meant to support what the browser. Meant to say what the browser should support as a minimum. Okay. Yeah, we didn't want to. I mean, we want to be browser agnostic.
Yeah.
As long as the browser version is up to date enough to support the encryption, then it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Lisa.
I had 2 questions. I guess one about the city data security piece, because I'm curious about what the implications would be for privacy of student records and student information. Do we know at all? Would that change where that information is housed or how it's shared, or is that still kind of TBD? Is that just somebody kind of
right
overseeing?
Now, I think the vision is developing, and I might not. It's not my role. Like, this is not my position. So
sorry,
but I don't want to. I don't want to undersell. I think it looks like that the vision is still developing. Mm-hmm. It came out of the city did like a needs assessment of some form or another that concluded that this was a necessary role, that there were the city was at risk for potential, whether a variety of different things that could be at risk. And so that coming out of that report, they developed this position, and then conceptually this idea that this would be broken up amongst departments. At the time, I did not understand that mechanism, this billing mechanism kind of. So that's on me, that was not fully understood. And we already had kind of what we thought our solution was, which was to move ahead with the money that you supported through Tom's presentation as part of the budget process. In terms of where the data is being housed, we're nowhere near to that grain size in terms of anything other than what we're currently doing. There's no conversation with us about housing data in different locations that we would need to change at this point. There's nothing attached to this position where, as a result of the city developing a position, then all the data, anything that would be localized data would have to be here. It's nothing like that. That's not any of the conversation that I've been aware of.
No, I haven't either. No, my understanding is that position, like you said, is slightly in flux. I know the job title has changed a couple of times. I think right now, the last I saw, it was a cybersecurity analyst, I believe, was the title.
Yep.
Which would, imply a role of more evaluating procedures and processes, and making sure that the data was protected, not that the data would change its actual location.
Yeah, and I think and that's my understanding too. This is kind of strategic level security work, I guess. Structures, procedures, policies, those sorts of things. But again, I don't want to be too specific because I think I understand it on one level, but we haven't been part of that conversation in depth.
Okay.
Right.
So.
And then my other question was kind of for probably too down in the weeds too, but
No,
I want to say either last year or the year before when we had this conversation, we were talking about doing an audit of all of the different apps and software that is being used in different classrooms. And it felt like the last time we had the conversation, it's a lot, and we're still trying to get our arms around it. Are we in any different place at this point in terms of at least knowing what's being used or setting some standards for how we're going to decide which things are allowed or not allowed?
So we continue to have those conversations with teachers. I know we have made some headway this year with trimming back, mostly looking at it from a budgetary perspective, not only from, just unwieldiness of what we've got out there, and really limiting things that are new that might want approval, and really saying no to a lot of new fancy looking things until we get an understanding of what might already be out there that is already doing these functions, or to give us a good argument for why we need this thing, and then if that's coming in, what's going out. So we've been doing, again, it's because there is a lot, but we are starting to chip away at that. And, Tom and I have those conversations with his folks, and yeah.
And just to go back in terms of data security, all the things that we're using or that we're approving all have to go through the consortium.
Yes.
Correct.
They have to have consortium approval in terms of data, personal data for students, things like that.
DPA signed.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
So.
Do you think at some point we could get an update on sort of where that's at? Maybe it's still TBD, but I would just be really curious to know which things.
We
It's
did
a lot for kids too to
Yeah.
figure out from class to class the 40 different things that are being introduced.
So as part of this, we may have some of this kind of ready to go, because I think about the governance committee work that we did, and I don't know, we might have to do some more, but part of what out of that initial conversation where we said, we asked the governance committee to kind of pump the brakes a little bit on what the language was they were looking at, was that there's a lot of different, we're not all doing the same thing. There's very different things that are happening across these different groups, police, municipal government, and us. There's a little bit more of a blend with fire. Fire has more of their stuff run through city IT than we do and police do. But as part of that, one of the things that they asked folks to develop was, I think they kind of refer to it as a matrix of what are the different softwares and kind of hardwares that we are supporting across our systems. And so some of that inventory was, Tom had put together stuff that was submitted to the governance committee to look at that stuff. I mean, beyond, do you think, would there be other stuff in terms of what Lisa's asking for?
Well, I guess it depends upon what granularity you want to go into.
I don't want to get too down in the weeds. I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, because we have the ones that we pay for and all that sort of thing. We have a license fee and all that sort of thing. Those we have a better grasp of what it is, where it is, how it's being used. The more difficult part would be getting down into the, teacher A over here, wanted to try out such and such a software, maybe to use it in the future, or maybe not. And they did a trial, and now I can't tell you honestly if they're still using it or not. If they're using a free version, I don't know.
Right.
Because innovation is really great, so it makes me happy just to know that if they're trying some innovative, cool new thing, it's at least going through somewhere where we're vetting the data's protected, and it sounds like that's happening. So that's
Which drives people bananas sometimes that we are.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, it
yeah.
does.
They don't like
What do you
that.
mean consortium?
They don't like
What?
that.
There's this new hot thing. It's
What list?
hasn't been approved by the consortium yet. So sometimes that holds back a little bit of innovation, but
you want the innovation, but as a parent, I also want to know that
Safety.
somebody's
Safety, yes.
There's a balance to it. I mean, there always is. Yes.
Thank you, Lisa.
So, Lisa, you hit on one of my questions. I think my other question was, and you actually have it up. I have a different aspect to it, but you've done a great job of classifying the information. File transmission is often a real concern from a leak standpoint. And so how does the school district make staff and administration aware of the classification of that? How do they tag that? And I didn't know that I probably just missed it, and it probably is in there, but how is that tagged so that the staff and administration are aware of what the classification of the data is?
Of the data itself?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yep.
I think that's probably something we need to get a little bit more into with the staff and administration. I mean, IT side, we have a little bit more of a grasp on it, but I think it's probably something we need to spend a little bit more time getting that information out.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you, Tom.
All right.
Tom, you did good following up the trip, so it was good.
That was
Good
tough.
work.
Yeah,
Good.
well,
Hey. Tough.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. The first item is the elementary playground update. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure you had, Kenny submitted, an update of kind of where we are in terms of the timeline connected to, those projects. So we're into doing walkthroughs, on the Little Harbor project. Let's see, I've already gone through that. And I know Kenny had just received, when I talked to him on Tuesday, I think he had 15, 16 different questions from potential vendors that he was getting back to on things. And then the proposal deadline post, now that they've done the walkthroughs, and Kenny will go through this question period, the proposal deadline for the receipt for us will be the 19th, and then we'll go through our process of selecting a vendor. So we're moving along, and I appreciate the desire for, I think, folks who are like, can we just do this, as we were talking about some of this conversation earlier this year, can we just do this summer? This takes a while to do this and do it correctly. So I just want to make sure people are aware, but this is where we're at. We feel good about where this is, and then to be able to roll this into the next couple of cycles thereafter.
Okay. Lee?
How do we make the playgrounds then accessible in the meantime? Why we're actually doing the process of updating? And part of what I'm thinking about is we take our kid on the weekend even to some of the playgrounds in Portsmouth, and we typically try and find ones that have accessible swings and things like that. How do we make sure that that's something that's possible in the meantime while we're waiting?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's something that, in all honesty, I think it's something we're not actively thinking about at the moment, at least at the central office level. And so it's a good point. So it's like, what can we do in the interim around some things that are some limited investments, which will allow, because we don't want to put in a bunch of things that we're going to rip out. So what are some limited investments? And I can have some of those conversations with Kenny around being thoughtful in that regard. I think because of the fact that the new requirements don't go into effect until we break ground, we really to be honest, and it's a short sight on our part, haven't been having a robust conversation about that type of interim play. And so I'm happy to do some reach out and conversation about that. It's a good point.
I'd be happy to help too.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Zach. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, sure. So a reminder to folks that on the 27th, we have our reception for retirees. So we'll be here at 6:30, ready to go. So if we do any, want us to be really thoughtful about if we do any non-meetings, non-public meetings, that we schedule it in a way where we make sure that we are done and ready to go at 6:30 to honor our retirees. Those of you who have been here know how this works. We'll be out there and have an opportunity to mingle with some folks, and then we start the meeting and we call up folks to honor them individually. So just a reminder, staff have been reminded. I want to make sure the board is aware and we're thoughtful about making sure that we're here and ready to go, because it's an important moment for folks who have given us a long period of service, and we want to see them off in the right way.
I'm wondering, would people be agreeable to having our non-meeting at 5:45, so we would have 45 minutes?
I struggle to get.
Is that too early for people to come?
I don't know if Allison would be.
We'll have to see. I think we can work on coordinating with all of you guys and with.
Why don't we?
I got to be honest, I struggle to get here even at 6. So.
Right. Yep. So we'll see what we can do in terms of thinking about scheduling.
Right.
But
Okay.
p.m.
Okay, thank you. It's always a wonderful event when we have the
It is.
retiree
It's
reception.
great,
So,
yeah.
yes, Lee.
I'm excited when retirees actually don't really retire like Rose, so thank you.
It's like the boomerang retirees. They
Yeah, right?
come back.
So just emails. You got to reach out from the debate team about their tournament. Always, Mr. Kraus is always looking for judges.
Yes.
So, and if you have, I know I've done it once, and it's a great morning. They run a great event. So if you have the opportunity to be part of it,
Is
it'd be
that
great
on
for them.
Saturday or is it
Well,
Friday?
this one is actually going to be on Friday. I think. I think this was different.
Friday.
Mine was a Saturday. So
During the school day,
During
yeah.
the school day. So
All right,
that-
I had
yeah.
it down for Saturday, but I'll
It
check that.
typically is a Saturday,
Okay.
which is a tough sell sometimes for
Okay.
judges. But no,
I'll
this
check
one will
on
be
it.
then. School board retreat on the 10th, and I think we've had a little bit of that kind of work on dates, and we'll do some work. It sounds like we'll be doing some work with the New Hampshire School Boards Association as part of that retreat.
Yep.
So wait, so what time is that? Because we had it scheduled and then changed it. So what time is it on the 10th?
I think,
Seven.
was it?
7.
Is that what, 7?
We said 7.
7, okay.
But a retreat, we usually start earlier than 7.
I missed it.
We're not
remember
having
what-
this, it's
'Cause
in
we
place
said-
of our school
there a
board
reason?
meeting.
Because
Right.
we were concerned about, 7 o'clock.
When did
Oh.
we set
right.
that?
So this was
I didn't- I
this
didn't
was
know
trying to, so the royal we in this case was our office in trying to, once we established a date,
Okay.
we were trying to work around what the availability of the folks at NHSBA was going to be, and
Yep.
is the timing connected to that?
Oh,
Yes.
I see.
Is that what it
Okay.
is?
Yes.
Okay. They didn't think they would be able to
Right.
be available until 7.
Okay.
So
Okay, so that will be 7 o'clock on June 10th.
June 10th, and
we-
with
we-
logistics to be determined, I guess. Well, we kind of know, but I think they'll be in person, is my understanding. Part of it
Yes,
is,
in
part of it is
person.
that we thought it would be valuable to have them in person and not do it remote. So,
And we will not go more than 3 hours, correct? So by 10 PM, we will finish.
no, because I think everybody will be retreating from the retreat if.
Toast, yes.
So I think, looking at some concentrated work for a few hours and then hit the road.
Okay,
So,
okay, great.
June would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you want to go to your memo?
I think most of the memo stuff, let's see. So we talked, I'll talk about city budget process in a second. I already talked about at the top around the challenges around MC3, which is, again, going to acronyms, making community and classroom connections, which is the after-school program, has been the after-school program exclusively for the last 2 years at New Franklin School, connected to a federal grant, and that will be working with a combination of REC and the Seacoast Community School. Primarily, the site-based option would be Seacoast Community School. So we're, again, those announcements and details we hope are coming soon, but we'll probably start with very soon some type of flyer or opportunity from Peak to have New Franklin families indicate we would be a family that would be interested in this service, so they can start trying to construct what that's going to look like in terms of staffing. And then the last one is city budget process. Several of you were part of those conversations last night. If you didn't see it, this was the opportunity for the city manager and the deputy city manager for finance and administration to introduce the budget as a whole to the council and to the community. It was about a 70, 80-minute total presentation. It was a combination of here's what the guidance was from the council, here is our kind of the baseline of where we were at, here are these other things that are happening in the context of thinking about budgeting, and then each of the different departments had an opportunity. We were given, it was 2 minutes-ish. I think the way they described it was same way that the mayor talks about citizens' comments. He's like, we'll keep 3 minutes in your heart, but we'll see what happens. And so we had 2 minutes-ish to talk about things. The focus of those presentations were around upcoming initiatives for each department. But then I did take an opportunity to talk about the difference between the proposal that was in the manager's budget and then the proposal you had voted on, and tried to This was not going to be the big dive into that, but it was an opportunity to say, here's where these differences are. I think one of the things I tried to highlight was they're kind of the two areas that we want to invest in primarily are connected to the cost. One of the cost drivers that are part of this kind of budget cycle that's challenging, which is around special education and out of district placements, and in particular being thoughtful about trying to start to build some in-house programming around one of those clusters, and a couple of positions that would be connected to that are not in the manager's proposal, and then a couple of positions that are connected to specifically student wellness and sense of belonging and well-being, and that those are also things that were investments that we felt were important and that needed to be part of things. Then, as has become tradition, they then called people back up for questions from the council, and most of those questions are for me. And I think there was one question that went to somebody else. And so some of those questions were for me about, I think it was enrollment. There was some special education conversation. I'm trying to think about what else. A few other things that we discussed. In terms of how the process goes, it was great because Byron, Nancy, and Carrie all spoke at citizens' comments. I think it was important for that to happen. They all did a great job. I will also say that the chief of police and the police commission at this point has now requested their own independent work session with the council during the budget season. Now, it's not clear what the council is going to do with that request, but that was a request from the chief at the podium. Was we are requesting our own independent sit down with you with the police staff, with the police commission to discuss the differences in our proposal versus the city. Yeah.
Is that for this particular cycle?
For this cycle is what they asked for. Okay. Now, it's not clear what the response to that request is going to be. I think that was left not totally clear when we left the room.
Interesting.
Should we request
Well, this is the question, right? So this is the question. In terms of where the process goes from here, they go back tomorrow night. What they didn't include, they did general fund last night, which is, things that we raised tax revenue for to pay. They're doing revenue funds, enterprise accounts, things that are supposed to be self-supporting through fees are tomorrow night. So water, sewer, things like that are happening tomorrow night. Next week, the 19th, they will be holding open the public hearing. Oh, great, thank you. They're going to hold open the public hearing so people will have an opportunity from the community to come up, talk about, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, worried about, in connection to whatever the budget proposal is. I think that is another opportunity for you to express your thoughts about what the council should ultimately pass. I do think it makes an impact. There were not changes that happened last night because it was just the initial presentation. When we initially presented our budget, it was very similar. But I saw some head nods when some of you were speaking and when I was talking to certain things from certain members of the council. So I think it's important that we continue to engage that process. The 28th, once they're basically collecting, there's not another opportunity at that for department heads to speak. So on the 19th, there's the public hearing. That is not another opportunity for me to do another presentation in relation to our budget. But the 28th is then designed, May 28th, to be collecting all these different questions and ideas that have been expressed through the public hearing, and then giving back some of that information to the public and or the council around what are these things that people have identified and said things about. So I would anticipate that would be a night where, depending on what is the activity, things that were already asked the first night, and then what the activity is on the 19th, that will put us in a position where our staff would be doing some responding to some specific things that came from citizens to try to explain whatever those questions are. And will be other opportunities to talk about your budget, your official budget recommendation to the city. There was also a member, it was interesting in citizens' comments, there was also a citizen who was exploring the idea of whether or not there was a law that would allow the manager's office to present a proposal which was anything other than yours originally. But that was floated as an idea, but they weren't able to point to an RSA at the moment. I think it's within the manager's right to say this is the thing. And I think if you see the budget book, which is available online, they do in multiple ways be like, here's the manager's proposal, here's the school board's proposal, in terms of the money, the categories. There's some narrative. We of course would always want more because we have a difference and we want to express that difference. But I don't think, in looking at what has been done for other departments, I wouldn't say that we've been mistreated necessarily in the way in which the binder has been put out. But I think we need to continue to have to advocate for whatever you feel is appropriate, and I will continue to advocate for the budget that you have proposed to them. So just a heads up. And then the 9th, and the 9th of June, so that we're going kind of every week we go, the 9th of June would potentially be a
Continuation of the public hearing.
It might even be the vote that night. They might vote on the.
Not they'll vote on the 23rd.
Yeah, and if not, the 23rd, because then I think we've talked about this before. If the council was not to come to a conclusion prior to the start, June 30th or July 1st, then the city manager's budget by default becomes the budget for the city. So
I'll email these dates to
yeah, that'd be
everybody.
perfect.
I'll send
And I
it out
almost I should have included it in my
that's
my
okay.
memo. I think this has been an interesting process. I think we need to. I encourage you to advocate strongly as we come into the home stretch, because this has been a really challenging year in terms of a bunch of different pieces of process connected to this year. I think a few more meetings worth of advocacy is smart, and I think all parties at this point have indicated an interest in having much earlier sit-downs around the next cycle. And I keep pushing August, that there's an August conversation that should happen around parameters and whatever, so that we can then thoughtfully say, okay, well, this is what the council is going to be looking for. We can decide whether or not we want to comply with that, but we do it thoughtfully while simultaneously looking at how are we advancing our strategic plan, how are we dealing with other issues that are rising to us in a smart way. So anyways, that's the city budget process at the moment.
I think Lisa has a question.
Yeah, so I think this is a budget question, but it's also probably a question about another piece of your memo and the email correspondence. But we've heard from a lot of parents with the recent situation with MC3 and during redistricting about concerns about the high cost and limited availability of after-school care for working families. And it strikes me as a larger budget question of, at what point in the day should these children be part of our mandate to educate versus REC's mandate to provide recreational opportunities for them after school? And it feels like it keeps falling through the cracks. And I don't know that it's an intentional thing, but it feels like, REC has a sort of limited ability to do the amount of programming that they do. We have a limited ability to do the amount of programming that we do. We have community partners. But there's a lot of families that consistently lack affordable childcare or frankly any childcare. So I guess at some point I would like, if we're contemplating an August conversation, to raise that in a bigger way. Because ultimately it's not really the school's responsibility to make sure that working families have somewhere for their kids to be for the entire length of the workday. But it's not falling under the REC's mandate either. And people are really struggling with this. And we hear from it every time there's some issue with changes to our after-school programming. And kids can't learn if they're not in a constructive and beneficial environment after school. It's just, there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's to everybody's benefit in the community to support this. So I just would like to put a thought that we should try to coordinate that better if we're going to talk in August.
Yeah, I think I would say just in terms of REC, my conversation with REC, and one of the things that we just had, which was unfortunate, and it wasn't by design, was the REC put out this was pre everything collapsing at MC3.
Right.
REC had put out that they were looking to kind of take their first baby steps into this arena. And so I think they had 30 slots, and then they opened it up Tuesday, and in 9 minutes those 30 slots were spoken for, and that included It included deposits
Yep.
as part of that. That was not something in the conversations we were having over vacation about what we thought, and we were having this collectively with both rec and Seacoast Community School all together. We were kind of like, what can we do? How can we solve this problem? And we didn't have a lot of solutions for summer, but there's not a lot of non-eligible kids who participate in the programming at New Franklin during the summer anyways. And so we knew that rec was going to have this smaller kind of dipping their toe in the water attempt, see how it went, and then with the idea of that might lead to them to some ideas about scalability after this year. Now, part of that is, for that to work for them, is we need to make sure we're working our bus routes, which might stretch our times a little bit, or working our bus routes so that kids can go from any of the 3 elementary schools to rec after school. And so that's something that we are working through. But it is, I think, some things that some of the parents don't realize is we as a school, in most cases, do not provide aftercare. We partner with other organizations to do that. And MC3 is a very unique situation driven by this federal grant that we lost at one point, that we then used ESSER funds to backfill for a year, and then we were successful in our application. And I also appreciate, while I'm rolling on this, the citizen we had tonight to come and talk about the not having the intermingling and then this creating some stigma. We agree that that's not ideal. But we also have had very definitive conversation with the state about the fact that we cannot commingle the funds, and then we've had conversation about, well, here are some ways in which we can maneuver the program so we have these kids, and these are fees and these not, and they've indicated a very hard stance on, we're no longer able to support you in that thing. So we're not unaware of the concern. We struggle to figure out a way to bring everybody together without the separation, without just giving up on those federal funds, which really help, and make the program super affordable for families in need. And so we don't know that a third party could, in fact, we're confident that a third party could not replicate that low-cost option for families in need through, scholarships or sliding scales, or charging some families more to do whatever. So that's the challenge we're up against. But I agree with you that the solution we're looking for is one that is more reflective of what MC3 has been. So.
Before we close, I just want to thank Kerry and Byron for being at the meeting last night. I was also there, but I thought their speeches were better than mine. And just strongly encourage, if you can go, you have eye contact with the council when you're right here, and you could see that they were responding to Kerry's presentation, Byron's presentation. I don't know how much my presentation, but it really, I think it has an effect on the council. And if we can get community members to also attend and make comments, I think that makes a big difference. So thank you for doing that. Now, Byron was on Zoom. Remember, you can always do Zoom if you can't make it here. So, and they misspelled Byron's name and said Byro. So we've been calling him Byro all day. But anyway, if you can't, you don't have to come if you can't. And that way you don't have to sit there and just, wait, because you might be waiting for a while. But if you can come in, also if you can encourage community people to come, I think that makes a big difference. Byro.
Yes, I'll take responsibility for mistyping my name.
Oh, that was you. Okay.
Normally I'm Brian on the Starbucks cups, but I'll a question on the superintendent's memo. We have the NESDEC spring update. It seems like a little bit of a no-op, which is expected in terms of the cycle time. Yeah. But one thing I was looking forward to in the memo that I'm not seeing is the redistricting sort of decisions.
Carrie reached out to, and so so we'll do on the 27th. We'll do like here's the breakdown of who decided what, where did people go, what does it look like in terms of Well, I think our breakdown of some staff stuff is going to be fluid because we're just running into, in the last couple of days, the numbers of kindergarten enrollment at Dondero are higher than we thought might be the case. So we're into like, how do we kind of shuffle? And this was part of the challenge when we gave people some agency about stuff, is that, that we weren't just moving people. We were gonna this was part of the possibility, and we'll see. We're not in an emergency mode or anything, but it's like, okay, we're gonna have to rethink some of the staffing pattern a little bit. So we'll be able to give you an update on what people chose. I think the variable for us will be ongoing enrollment from non-families that are already with us. That could have changed some staffing patterns, but we'll definitely be able to give you a full update. And I think you know the city map is now up to date with the new lines. So thank you to the city. We did some back and forth with them to get that, and we figured let's not wait until the fall. As soon as we're done, here it is. So as new families reach out to the elementary schools, we can point them to the city map and say this is where.
And thank you for that, and thanks to the city for updating that.
Yep, city was very helpful. So, but we'll give you a more robust update on the 27th. Yep.
All right. Anybody else? Is there any more to talk about on the NASDAQ stuff? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so. I did say to the city council tonight, because one of the councilors asked me about, well, once the redistricting settles, can we start talking about class sizes at the elementaries? And I wasn't sure exactly what the frame was for the question, but I did say that every day that I drive by, the WTSA site and I watch that thing going up, I get heart palpitations and our statistical models hopefully will hold true in terms of the number of families that we're going to see in those units. And at the same time, I'm always like, whoa, please.
Yeah, I think it's going to be helpful. I think the future building needs can. I don't think it would be too difficult to pull a historical model in terms of where kids are coming from and sort of like have some strong data to root ourselves in terms of those the anxiety around development and like what actually comes out of those developments.
I think we have a story to tell, and I think it's been pretty consistent. What happens? And at the same time, you still look at that thing, and I'm like,
it's the
oh
most
boy.
Starts. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, anyways, that's it. That's all I got in the superintendent stuff.
Okay. Do you want to continue with the
correspondence? Just a letter of resignation from Emily Sherman, who served the STEM teacher at the middle school, involved in a variety of different positive projects. She had launched one of their STEAM projects was through a Clipper Fund grant, and they launched a boat that went across the Atlantic, and they were able to track it and do all this stuff. So she's done some nice work, but is moving into a position back into an administrative role, curriculum role in another district. So we were happy to have her while we did, and we wish her the best of luck.
Very good. Thank you. We wish her the best of luck also. Okay, on to new business. Did you talk about this? Did I miss it?
NASDAQ, Byron just mentioned that there wasn't a lot of change. It was not. And then asked whether or not we'd be doing an update soon on the redistricting stuff, and I said that next meeting would be an opportunity to do that.
Okay. And then that committee will start to meet. I'll bug Byron when he comes back, but we want to get that committee.
Yeah, we should just have some dates on the calendar for a couple times next year.
Okay.
So.
All right, moving on. We have the consideration and approval of FY 2026 general assurances. I guess, do we have a motion to table this discussion until the May 27th meeting?
Motion to table.
Okay. Lisa and Lee, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we will discuss that on May 27th, most likely at 6 p.m. Maybe a little before, well, no, that might be.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. We'll let everybody know. Committee updates, we have the policy committee minutes. And then, does anybody else have committee reports?
Pip actually told me to mention this. I was in contact with her I think the past 2 weeks now, about a policy regarding the music that can be played in the district. I don't really know how much in depth I need to go on the record here during this meeting, but she said to just let you guys know that she accepted it to be on the next policy meeting agenda. I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
just,
Sounds good.
just to let you guys know.
Can't wait to find out that.
Okay. I have been taking Lee's place on the Sustainability Committee. So I've gone to a couple of meetings, and they're anxious to have some kind of input from the school board about electric school buses. So Brian is helping me put together some information. I think what I'm going to suggest at the next meeting, which is May 22nd, is that they appoint a subcommittee to study the issue. I'm trying to do research, and I'm finding that it's beyond my scope of ability to comprehend all of the ins and outs of electric school buses. So I'm going to, you all might have an opinion, but
No, I think
thought I would
Nathan did a
suggest-
report for that committee like 3 years ago.
Who did?
Nathan Lenny, I think,
Oh, he
did
did?
at least an informal memo to them a few years ago, if
Oh,
I
that's
recall.
good to know, thank
I
you.
remember
I was
at some
briefly on
point
that
we
committee
gave
and it
something
came
about,
up.
we didn't think,
It wasn't very
the one
in-depth.
the one I can think about was in terms of the CIP process. Maybe 2 years ago, there was a citizens request. There's a citizens request process as part of CIP, and there's a citizens request for electric school buses. And Nathan provided, it was like a paragraph or two, just at the moment.
Feasibility.
It was feasibility, yeah, and it was like, and it was, you know, it was cost prohibitive, and that we didn't, at the time, didn't see that being something we would pursue. I will say, in line with that, Nancy, it was just that, you know, I've had this conversation with Peter Britz at Planning, that in terms of the city's sustainability work, I had one of his staff members a year or two ago reach out to me with some questions about things the school may or may not be doing in relation to the sustainability plan. And what I had to respond with was, we don't necessarily have like a statement or a guiding principles connected to sustainability, other than I'm like, I think our board broadly likes sustainable, but we don't have a way to articulate for like a city document when, let's say something like buses, if buses were triple the amount we would spend, or 4 times the amount we would spend on our current bus contract, and we know that we only have so much money to spend, when that sustainability goal comes up against the other things, how do we prioritize that sustainability goal versus those other things? And that we've never had that formal conversation. And it doesn't mean we have to, and not every board has some type of sustainability kind of doctrine. But that was part of what I reported back to them. It's hard for me to answer your questions, because broadly, I think we like sustainable things, but I don't know to how those would be prioritized in connection to other concerns. So.
Well, what I would like to say, oh, Lee, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a very ignorant question, perhaps, which is, I didn't think we actually owned our own buses. I thought they were.
We don't.
Oh.
We
So
contract. So this would be.
contract out.
So we contract
What,
out.
we would dictate that through contract?
So you want to talk about that mechanism, how that would work?
You would have to write that into the contract, and of course, that would be reflected in rates, so.
Yeah.
Which would be exponentially higher.
Yeah.
Not to mention the infrastructure that you have to build to have an electric bus or electric buses to the terminal, and you can only go through Eversource is the only one that works with the program, where the co-ops, you can't. So Unitil and the electric co-op, you can't. There's a lot of balls in the air when we're talking about it. I've went through it in Oyster River several times, and it was cost prohibitive every time.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that to get an affordable lease payment, you'd have to go 10 years, which is fine down south, but there's no bus that'll last 10 years up here with the type of weather we have, especially being on the ocean like we are. It just eats away at the buses. So the electric battery may work, but the bus itself may crumble on the road after so many years.
And at the moment, really, there are, not in terms of electric buses, just buses in the region. It's really 2-ish vendors that are available in the whole region.
Yeah.
So if we were asking them to make significant investments, that might not pan out over time. You know, I don't know. It's a great conversation. I think it's one. I know it's been one since I've been here. We will have somebody at some point ask us to go to busing that's electric, and I think it's going to keep coming back around until we do something thorough. But they could appoint some group of people to do that study.
Well, that's what I would like to do.
Well,
Lee?
I ride the C&J buses to Boston to hop on the plane, and if C&J can't find a good return on investment and they purchase their buses from Prevost, which actually they make electric buses, but C&J can't find a business reason to actually make that purchase, how are we going to?
So those are the types of questions that we would need to explore.
I just don't see it happen.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you see with Amazon, you have electric delivery vans that are starting, so I think there's movement in the space, but I don't think that, I mean, we had Ken talking about the solar and the upside of that investment, and certainly where the Venn diagram of sustainability and fiscal upside is there, I think we should be all over it. But yeah, I don't think anyone, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of electric vehicles for a number of reasons, but I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's realistic.
The business case has to be there, and it's not. At least not for a school district.
Okay, well, I think what I'm going to do is ask the Sustainability Committee, which is a very active group. Lee, I'm sure you know because you sat on it for a while.
I believe there's a PHS junior joining that committee.
Oh, good. Okay, because we always had a student from the high school on the committee. Oh, really? That's good news.
Yeah, I've tried to coordinate. There's a girl in my grade who's very passionate about joining. I think she'll be at your next meeting.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll look for her. But anyway, I thought I would ask them to come up with a subcommittee to study the issue. And I find it's beyond my level of expertise, certainly. And I've been trying to do all this research. So I thought I would turn it over to them and see, you know. And it would have to be not only a school board decision, it has to be a city decision because it's so cost prohibitive. So it's not just a school board.
And I would just say that I appreciate you approaching the study idea in that way and not throwing it on us to figure out a study based on a request from a committee that we may or not be interested in following, because that could be a big bandwidth thing for us to try to spend a bunch of time doing that. So I think it would be appropriate for that request to be back towards that group.
Okay. All right, so that's the only report I have. Does anybody else have a committee report? Okay. Future agenda requests. Kerry and I think Byron had requested a redistricting update, so we talked to Zach and he'll do it at our next meeting. If there are any other, Lee had sent a memo. Lee, I have your memo. And we'll talk about that at our agenda setting meeting. And we'll talk about the issues that you brought up. Does anyone else have anything? If you do, please let us know, and we'll add it to the agenda. Okay. Reopening of the public comment. It looks like we don't have anyone in the audience that would like to speak. What did you say?
Nope, you're right.
Oh, okay. So we will close the public comment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll see
We
you.
gotta get some people.